Buenos días, bienvenidos y bienvenidas todas y todos a este nuevo contacto internacional en el marco de la consulta por la calidad educativa. En esta oportunidad conversaremos con Andreas Sneicher. Andrea es el responsable del área de indicadores y análisis de la División de Educación de la OECD, es jefe de división con responsabilidades en el desarrollo y coordinación internacional del programa PISA. Es además director del programa de indicadores de educación conjunto entre la OECD y la UNESCO, además de el coordinador de publicaciones de organismos internacionales como Eurostat, la ILO, UNESCO y el Banco Mundial. Como profesión es titulado en física por la Facultad de Física de la Universidad de Hamburgo, con máster en ciencias del Departamento de Matemáticas de la Universidad de Dublín de Australia, máster en ciencias del Departamento de Matemáticas, como ya le dije, de Australia. Bienvenido, Andreas, a este contacto internacional.
Most fundamental challenge in most countries is to raise the quality and relevance of education. Many countries have got more people to participate in education, but the challenge of making sure that every child leaves school is a strong foundation for the future. The foundation that is not only good academically, but also relevant for the future lives of young people. It's a formidable challenge in most countries. So, and what does it mean in policy terms? It has to do with attracting the most talented teachers to the most challenging classroom, to make sure that the best principals have accepted school. Some countries have made rapid progress. If you look to South America, you can look at Brazil, a country that has seen enormous progress in the field of education. If you go to Asia, you can find many countries moving very rapidly forward. But the challenges that remain are very fundamental.
Andrea, tú diriges PISA, que es el programa de indicadores sobre educación a nivel internacional. Explícale un poco a los docentes en general cuál es el propósito de PISA.
So, Andreas, you're right now running PISA, which is an international program, measure program. So, can you explain all the school teachers and teachers, what is PISA about?
Yeah, PISA is an effort to directly measure the quality of education. And one thing that makes PISA special is that it's not just concerned with testing whether students can reproduce what they've learned in school. But the idea of PISA is to see whether students can use their knowledge creatively, whether they can extrapolate from what they know and use and apply that knowledge in novel situations. And we do this because the modern world no longer rewards people for just what they know, but for what they can do with what they know. So that's the idea of PISA. It's an innovative framework for assessment. It also looks at the social background of students so that we can relate the performance of students to their home background from which they come from. It collects data from teachers, from schools, from the education system to help us understand what are the kind of factors that influence learning with us. What can students do to learn more effectively? What can do teachers do effectively? What can education systems do to work more productively? Those are the ideas, the driving force behind PISA, but at the heart of this is really an assessment that doesn't look at school knowledge, student academic knowledge, but at the capacity of students to creatively use that knowledge.
¿Qué dicen las pruebas PISA de los resultados de aprendizajes en América Latina y el Caribe?
Well, overall, the results of PISA are quite disappointing for much of Latin America. Many students in Latin America are very good in just, remembering what the teachers taught them. But they have often great difficulty in applying that knowledge, in using that knowledge in different circumstances, in translating their knowledge in different fields, thinking across disciplinary boundaries. This is where we see great sort of disappointments in much of Latin America. We also see that in many Latin American countries, the success of students is very closely related to their social background. If you come from a privileged family, you know, you're doing really well, you're doing as well as in education systems anywhere in the world. But if you come from a poor family in South America, you are a lot more penalized, and for example, in comparable Asian countries. So overall, the picture is not that great for Latin America. On a positive note, though, we've seen some Latin American countries making remarkable progress over recent years. I mentioned already the case of Brazil. Brazil was very successful to get more young people to participate in education and at the same time raise the quality of education. Colombia is another education system, recently seeing some successes. But I must say overall, Latin America still has a very long way to go, according to our comparisons in PISA, and making learning more relevant, and creating an environment for teachers to work creatively, in creating an environment of a high degree of professional autonomy of teachers, but also in a collaborative culture. All those are elements where we do not see sufficient progress in many of the countries in the region. I must say this certainly.
En las pruebas PISA, los países, en los sistemas educativos de los países más desarrollados quedan en los primeros lugares. Los países con menos niveles de desarrollo quedan muy distantes. ¿Cuál es la explicación a esto? La variable económica, la variable de dependencia tecnológica, la variable de desarrollo industrial. ¿Qué explica esta diferencia de los comportamientos de los sistemas educativos?
Yeah, you know, what's interesting is actually the premise is not quite true. The world is no longer divided between rich and well-educated nations and poor and badly educated ones. The top-performing education system is not a rich country. It's the education system of Shanghai in China. You can look at Singapore. You know, in the year 1965, when Singapore became independent, 2% of the adult population could read and write. It was a very poor country, but it invested in its education system. Today, it's one of the world's leading education systems. Korea, another of those success stories. In the 1960s, Korea had the level of economic development of Afghanistan today. One of the least developed education systems. Today is at the punching. Or you look to Europe. Finland, in the 1960s, an average performer. Today, at the top of the league. So actually many countries have not waited to become rich until they invested in their education. But they have used education as the great equalizer to give all young children a chance to succeed, and they have developed their economies because they made the investments right. You know, you can almost, if you take the results from PISA, you can divide your countries into two groups. And that is how they invest in the future and in the present. If you look at the countries in East Asia, for example, they spend their last resources in society on the education of their children. Every parent, every grandparent will sacrifice their own lives to facilitate the lives of the future generation. If you contrast this with Europe, you know, in Europe we are very good at spending the money of our children today. You can see all the debt that we accumulate. So it is this high value that is placed on education that can transform society. It's not money. In fact, again, you know, if you look at spending per student, money only explains about 20% of performance differences among countries. Much more important is how countries invest their resources. So in a way, you know, many of the countries that are poor in the past have used education to develop the societies and economies.
Los detractores de PISA le señalan dos grandes problemas. Uno, el intento de PISA de construir una sola visión de la educación y las limitaciones de PISA para incorporar áreas como historias nacionales, literatura, arte en las pruebas de medición. ¿Qué señalas tú al respecto?
You know, I agree with this. I think there are important limitations in any international comparison. You know, if you want to look at performance of education internationally, you have to look at features that education systems share across them. And there are many important local dimensions. There are many important cultural dimensions that are much harder to sort of compare, to contrast, to quantify. And in that sense, PISA is quite limited. But at the very same time, what we can actually show is that the competencies that PISA measures, the ability of students to think critically, the ability of students to think creatively, the ability of students to argue, to sort of to think across fields of subjects. Those type of skills are highly predictive for the success of students in our society, in our economy. You can do it the other way around. The absence of mathematics skills doesn't imply the presence of arts, of social skills, of historical skills. PISA is limited in its perspective, but it is a very important perspective. I should also say that PISA is trying to expand the range of competencies that are being assessed. For example, we include now interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, global competencies. There are many dimensions that PISA is incorporating over time. It's never going to be complete. Education is always going to be much broader than what we can currently assess. And so there will always be limits. But, those competencies that we test with PISA are highly predictive for the future. We have good data.
Andreas, ¿cuál es el papel de los docentes en la transformación de los sistemas educativos a escala global a partir de las experiencias de los resultados de PISA? Para ti, ¿cuál es el papel de los docentes en la actual etapa de la transformación de los sistemas educativos?
Well, the quality of an education system can never be better than the quality of the teachers. In high-performing education systems, teachers play a fundamental role. They are not only good in explaining the subject matter content, but they have a high degree of capacity to personalize learning. They understand that ordinary students have extraordinary skills. They are able to apply a diverse range of pedagogic strategies to students. They are not only teachers of academic context, but they take a lot of social responsibility for the human development of the children. And that's something that we see in most of the highest performing education systems, that the teachers are the agents of change. They work with a high degree of professional autonomy. They are not just educating, fabricating content, but they really develop the education systems. They own their professional culture. The teachers are not, just implementing what the Ministry of Education has taught for them, but they are creating the education system. They work with each other every day. Teachers work with other teachers. They develop their professional knowledge every day. There are many interesting lessons that we can learn from the education systems that are strongest in respect of the teaching profession.
El equipo de PISA internacional cuenta con docentes de las distintas regiones del mundo, de los distintos países en los cuales se aplica la prueba PISA en la etapa de su diseño y en el propio procesamiento de los datos.
Absolutely. We are surveying teachers. In fact, we just completed the world's largest survey of teachers in teaching, where we looked at the pedagogical beliefs of teachers, where we asked teachers about the work organization, the support, values society places on the role of teachers, all those factors that are critically important. So we have a very important instrument to survey the teaching profession.
Si te correspondiera, atreviéndonos a soñar, sugerir 3 grandes ideas fuerza para transformar los sistemas educativos de la región, en el caso de América Latina y el Caribe, ¿cuáles serían esas ideas fuerzas que tú señalarías?
Yeah, I think one idea is about relevance. It's about making sure that education is not just about the curriculum, but it's about the creative use of that curriculum, ensuring that what students learn is highly relevant. The second idea that I do find very important in the Latin American context is to encourage more and enable more professional autonomy, but in a collaborative culture. Most Latin American school systems are quite highly regulated. They're very administrative. They have a highly industrial work organization. To create a more professional work organization that draws out the best in the teaching, is very, very central to strong performance. You know, the best minister of education in the world cannot solve the problem of millions of students and 100,000 of teachers. But if the education system can draw on the best ideas among all of the teachers, among all of the students, you can actually change the world. So I think creating professional autonomy with a collaborative culture is the second part I would mention. The third part I would mention is to become better at aligning the resources with the challenge. Many Latin American education systems actually invest quite a lot of money in education. The total amount of money invested in education is not small, but they are not so good in aligning those resources with the social challenges of students and teachers. They're not so good in attracting the most talented teachers to the most challenging classrooms and to get the best principals to the toughest schools. So using their resources better so that they reflect the social and economic challenges of students in schools, I would raise as the third part.
Andreas, alcanzar una educación de calidad hoy implica un mayor involucramiento del Estado en la conducción de la educación, en el financiamiento, o ceder espacio del Estado al sector no gubernamental. ¿Qué implica hoy en calidad?
I think the public education system is always the cornerstone of any country. I think you can encourage a lot of initiatives. You can draw in a lot of public and private kind of ideas into the system, but it's the government that has to take responsibility that every student has access to excellent teaching. And that's exactly what you see in the best performing education systems. Look at the contrast. You can look in many of the Asian countries. It does not matter whether you are born in a rich or a poor family. You have an excellent education, irrespective of where you come from. And spending of education is directed such that it reaches the students with the greatest needs. You take the other extreme. You go to the United States. You know, if you live in a rich community, you have a lot of money for your schools. If you live in a poor community, you really struggle for a good education. You know, and I think there are still many education systems that are more similar to the United States with large social disparities. And the role of the government can be to ensure that high-quality education is universal. The role of the government is also to ensure that all teachers are well prepared, that there is a rigorous system for monitoring the quality of teachers, to ensure that teachers are engaging in professional development, to ensure that there are attractive careers for teachers. It's not only about salaries, it's also ensuring that teachers have a way to grow professionally. So I think the role that government can play in shaping education, providing an enabling environment, is absolutely fundamental. This is not about micromanagement and sort of telling teachers what to teach and how to teach. It's providing the environment in which good ideas in the education system can flourish.
Andreas, ¿es posible alcanzar cobertura total de la educación, es decir, avanzar hacia modelos de masificación con calidad educativa?
Well, that's actually not an hypothetical question. We have actually good data on this. Again, you look to some of the highest performing education systems. If you look to Japan, you look to China, education is universal and at a very high level of quality. You look to a country like Brazil, you know, education is becoming universal and standards of quality are rising. We should not see quality and equity as opposing policy objectives. It's the combination of quality and equity that characterizes the world's most advanced education system.
¿Cómo debería ser la educación del mañana, del hoy del mañana, para que nuestros jóvenes egresados logren desarrollarse profesionalmente y laboralmente?
Well, you know, no teacher can prepare students for life. Now, that's no longer possible because life changes so fast, occupations changing so fast. To help students to develop great ways of thinking. Again, you know, problem-solving skills, creativity, critical thinking, to develop social skills, helping students to manage and resolve conflicts, to take ownership of their ideas, to take a high degree of social responsibility. to develop strong ways of working, collaboration, teamwork, working with people who are different from you, engaging with diversity. Those are critical dimensions for the future. I would call them 21st century skills. It's very sort of generic skills, but ones that have a long duration. And of course, 21st century skills call for 21st century technologies, new ways of learning, making sure that learning is becoming universal. Learning is no longer just a matter of school, but extends through our life. That after school we will have the motivation, the capacity, and the opportunities to continue learning throughout our lives. That's very important. And all of that hinges on 21st century pedagogies. Again, it's the capacity of teachers to engage with student diversity, to help students sort of find their own ways. It's not about conformity and compliance. It's about strengthening ingenuity and new ideas, creativity, innovation. Today, stacking up knowledge is no longer going to help you because it depreciates rapidly in value. It's about helping young people to create new knowledge, to share their knowledge, to work with others. And those are collaborate, compete, connect. Those are the keys really for the 21st century. And I think there are some very good examples for how we can develop them.
Andreas, ¿sigue siendo la educación una herramienta útil para alcanzar justicia social, igualdad y auténtica democracia?
Well, absolutely. In fact, again, this is not an hypothetical question, but we actually have very, very good data on this. For example, where people have great skills, they tend to have greater trust in each other. Where people have better skills, they tend to show more social responsibility. They have a higher propensity of volunteering. They have a better understanding of political efficacy. Our data show, for example, that people at the high end of the skill distribution see themselves as contributors of society. They believe they can make a difference. They can influence political processes. People at the low end of the skill spectrum see themselves as object of society. They don't have the sense of ownership that they can actually make a difference to their society. So the link between education, the skills of people, and the kind of social outcomes that underpin functioning democracies are absolutely fundamental. And you can see that on a global scale. If you think about, you can put billions of US dollars into a country like Afghanistan, without building the education, the opportunities for people to learn, it's not going to make any differences in quality of life, at least not in a sustainable way. Most education systems of most countries that have well-functioning societies have also a very strong public education system.
Andrea, volviendo a PISA. PISA como programa actualmente, ¿en cuántos países se aplica? ¿Y cuáles son los desafíos que tiene PISA para los próximos años o décadas para contribuir, desde tu perspectiva, a evaluar la educación a escala global?
Yeah, currently PISA is used in 75 countries. Some other countries are joining the test at the moment, so there's a broadening range of countries taking part in this. Some of the challenges that we face is as the group of countries that takes part in PISA is becoming more diverse. We also need to make the instruments of PISA more flexible. One of the things that we are doing is that we are setting up international expert groups from all of the participating countries that can think about, what are the kind of skills that make young people successful tomorrow? How can we actually measure those skills? How can we compare those skills? So there's a lot of effort going into making the instruments of PISA better adapted to a wider range of countries that are taking part in the assessment.
¿Han pensado en crear oficinas regionales, regionalizar los análisis y los estudios?
Very important point. In fact, we're trying not to bureaucratize the PISA assessment. We're actually trying not only to develop regional competence, but also a lot of national competence. Every country that is taking part in PISA has an obligation not only to administer the test, but contribute to the idea, to the development of the instruments, provide the best mathematics and science and problem-solving experts to help advance the instruments. So, in fact, the strength of PISA is an international network, not a set of offices and regions or countries, but it's a range of international expertise. There are thousands of experts around the world collaborating on the development of the PISA instruments, and that's the real power of it. If you come to my organization, the OECD in Paris, you're going to find a few people. We are investing most of the resources in the countries to develop the ideas that move this assessment forward.
Andreas, ¿qué le dirías tú a aquellos educadores que piensan que PISA es algo así como el imperialismo educativo hoy en día?
Well, a lot of the PISA assessment, as I say, is if I look at the test items, all of the countries that are taking part in PISA are contributing to the development of the tasks. There are test items from Brazil, from Colombia, from Peru, from Chile, from Argentina, from many countries in Latin America, or from Mexico in the PISA assessment. And it's the collaborative engagement of those countries. PISA is not owned by an institution or by a country, or it's all of the countries taking part have the responsibility to contribute to the development. And if teachers have ideas to change the assessment, there's a lot of scope in PISA to actually further develop and improve the instruments. International comparisons are never easy. They're never perfect. But they show us what's possible in education.
Para ir cerrando este contacto internacional, Andreas, nos gustaría que le dirigieras un mensaje a los maestros, a las maestras, a los profesores y profesoras venezolanos y venezolanas que en sus aulas, con sus pares, en sus centros educativos, están discutiendo el tema de la calidad educativa como una oportunidad para avanzar en la transformación de nuestro sistema educativo. ¿Cuál es tu mensaje para ellos?
Well, the education and the school system of Venezuela today is the society of Venezuela tomorrow. There's nothing more important than investing in the knowledge and skills of young people. And it will be teachers and school leaders who are going to be the agents of change, the kind of people that are shaping tomorrow's society, tomorrow's economy as well. That's something that we all need to take to our heart, to make sure that we invest in the future of our countries. Venezuela has actually done a lot in raising quantity of education, giving more young people a place to learn, a place to study, raising relevance, raising quality, and raising equity in schooling. Still remains a very important agenda for the year.
Conversamos hoy con